Hello and welcome to a very special edition to the Mishcon Sports Law Academy, where today we're going to be looking at the big changes that have happened in the world of agents and agents regulations. As you may be aware, from the 9th of January, new regulations came into force that will really have an impact on the whole football industry and agents in particular. So what are the key changes that you should be aware of? Tom Murray from our sports law team is going to explain a little bit more.
First up, we have the cap on agents' fees. By far the most controversial issue is the introduction of a universal worldwide cap on the fees that agents can charge their clients. Now, the level of the cap depends on who the agent represents and the level of remuneration of the agent's client. In summary, where the agent represents an individual, being a player or a coach, the service fee cap is 3% of the individual's remuneration. The second scenario is where the agent represents the engaging club, and again, the service fee cap is 3% of the relevant player or coach's remuneration. The third situation is where the agent represents both the engaging club and the individual, where the service fee cap is doubled to 6% of the relevant individual's remuneration. And finally, where the agent represents the releasing club, the service fee cap is 10% of the transfer compensation. Now, the level of these caps are increased where the client earns $200,000 or less. Now, the previous regulations included a suggested benchmark of how much agents should earn, but this was non-compulsory. And in practice, agents typically charge between 3 and 10% of the player's gross salary. Now, it's highly likely that established football agencies or associations of football agents will challenge the service fee cap on the basis that it's anti-competitive. Now, one surprising new addition of the new regulations is that the service fee cap potentially applies to commercial revenues such as sponsorship deals, albeit this is a rebuttable presumption. As things stand, the new cap will apply from the 1st of October 2023 in respect of any representation agreement concluded or renewed after the 16th of December 2022. Next up, we have the client pays principle. Another key change in the regulations is the introduction of the client pays principle. But what does this mean? Historically, it's been rare for players to pay agents directly. Typically what happens is that the fee is paid by the engaging club on behalf of the player. Under the new regulations, agents have to be paid by their clients directly. In our view, this is likely to lead to more players taking a closer look at the fees payable to agents, and therefore may lead to more disputes. Next up, the agent's exam is back. Before the deregulation of agents in 2015, agents had to pass a multiple choice exam on the FIFA regulations and the relevant national regulations. And this exam is being reintroduced by FIFA. Would-be agents will need to achieve 75%, being 15 out of 20 questions in an hour in order to pass. The first exam will take place on the 19th of April 2023, with the second exam taking place on 20th of September, and resits will take place the following year. Those who previously passed the pre-2015 exam will not be required to sit another exam. But the new exam will be a daunting process for would-be agents, particularly given that the previous exam had a pass rate of less than 35%. Where existing or would-be agents fail the exam, they will not be permitted to carry out football agent services, which could lead to their representation contracts being terminated. And they may lose their right to be paid commission in respect of previous deals. So as you can see, passing the exam is a big deal. So now let's talk about representing multiple parties. Under the new regulations, agents are only able to represent one client in a transaction. Now, there's one exception to this rule, where agents are permitted to represent the engaging club and a player where both parties have given their prior written consent. And what about a player's right to terminate? The new regulations introduce the ability for players to terminate their representation agreements where they have just cause to do so. Now, this includes where agents have their licence suspended or withdrawn. Now, whilst this change has been subject to much discussion, it doesn't fundamentally change the current legal position. Under English law, players have always been able to terminate their contracts for what's known as repudiatory breach. Now, whilst just cause introduces a separate termination right under the regulations, this is unlikely to go significantly beyond the current legal position. Having said that, it's still important that agents take advice on the new regulations. So what's coming up next? The FIFA Football Agent Regulations govern international activity as opposed to domestic transfer systems. Member associations such as the FA are required to bring into force and implement their own national regulations by the 30th of September of this year. These must be consistent with the FIFA regulations, but they can impose stricter measures. The FIFA regulations are intended to be a floor and not a ceiling. So in short, there's more to come. So what should agents be doing now? First of all, agents should be reviewing and updating their existing representation contracts to ensure that these comply with the new regulations. Secondly, agents should be speaking to sports lawyers to prepare new template representation agreements that also comply with the new regulations. Finally, agents that are required to sit the agents exam should start preparing now. The study materials released by FIFA run to 528 pages, so you best get started. If you have any questions about the FIFA Football Agents Regulations, please don't hesitate to get in touch. I've been Sports Law Tom, and this is the Mishcon Sports Law Academy.